Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Wine with Jimmy channel. Delighted that you are on board for this wonderful ride around Spanish wines for the WSET Level 3. So we are going to go through a series here on Spain. You've hopefully already done video 1, so this is part 2 of 10, looking at the black grape varieties of this wonderful part of the Iberian Peninsula. So we'll go through some fantastic varieties here. Now, this part, along with all parts up to part 4 is free content, but parts 5 through to 10, including the all-important short written question and answers that I walk through, which is part 10, is available as only content available on my portal. That's at the bottom there, winewithjimmy.com. You'll see it at the bottom. So first of all, a couple of things around wine styles here for your red wines. So Spain's red wines come in a very wide range of styles. And the slightly cheaper, inexpensive wines may be made without oak, so in likes of stainless steel. And often semi-carbonic maceration is used to enhance the very fruity and floral nature of those styles of wine. So you'll typically find this in areas like Rioja, for example, Catalonia, and Valencia, where they are making just very sort of lovely, soft, fresh, fruity wines that could be chilled as a red, certainly in the local domestic market where it can get very hot, certainly in central continental Spain, for example. But also you'll find more premium wines. So the best wines almost always see oak maturation, usually with a small proportion or a significant proportion of new oak. Traditionally, American oak was very much used, but French oak is now also very common. You'll see here, this is the exceptionally large barrel cellar of Campo Viejo, and they do make premium wines as well. I just wanted to show you how significant a cellar can be in somewhere like Spain, specifically Rioja, as you see just here. So let's go through our major varieties. And of course, where we must start is the principal black grape variety of Spain, Spain's premier black grape variety, which is Tempranillo. So you'll see a picture of Tempranillo just there. This is widely grown throughout the vineyards of northern and central Spain. But you might not find it being called Tempranillo. There are multiple alternative grape names, synonyms for Tempranillo, like Tinta Fino or Tinta del Toro or Sensabal. There's quite a few of these. I think there's 13 common ones, but there's something like 60 of them in total. We're just going to refer to it as Tempranillo. You might be very happy to know that. When it gets to the diploma, of course, things change. So the grape variety, first of all, it is early budding and ripening. It's all about early, and it comes from the word temprano, which means early. It is an early style variety, certainly in comparison to the likes of Garnacha, Mazuelo, Carrenena, for example, as well. It's a variety that doesn't do well in extremely windy conditions, and it doesn't do well also in extreme drought. So in places like the wide plains of Castilla y Leon, Castilla-La Mancha, this variety will often be found in areas which there is water available or altitude where rainfall is a little bit more intense. So it doesn't like the most extreme conditions. Typically, it had medium levels of acidity. I must put a caveat here, though, because that can change depending on the climatic and geographical conditions that go into the wine. So, for example, in Ribera del Duero, with very high altitude and then very cold nights, you get quite high levels of acidity, for example. So whilst it needs sufficient warmth to develop its flavors, it needs good conditions, sunny conditions in summer. The hot climates that don't have a diurnal range could cause the wine to lack the necessary acidity due to the fact that it generally has medium acidity levels. So therefore, it's generally best in areas which is moderated by the sea and or altitude. So looking at La Rioja just here and Ribera. Now, Rioja has some moderating effect from the ocean and altitude. Ribera is all about altitude, for example. Toro has some effect and some good altitude as well. These are really our main areas, and also Navarra up here as well. So the northern areas tend to be where it's very commonly found. Now, Tempranillo is found pretty much everywhere, but these are the main areas. And stylistically, so fermented on its own, often using semi-carbonic maceration, it can produce very sort of strawberry, raspberry scented wines, which are classified as young or joven or conseja. And that's a very early drinking and popular style today. But of course, its fame is that it plays the major part in a traditional blended style, typically with the leading role backed up with secondary varieties like Garnacha, Graciano, and Mazuelo, but also international varieties as well. So think of things like Rioja and, of course, Ribera del Duero, for example. The characteristics you find, as you'll see just here, now typically Tempranillo has red fruits. You'll find strawberry and plum and cherry. However, in very concentrated expressions, you may find things like blackberry as well, like in Ribera del Duero. Vanilla and coconut, often due to the influence of American oak. And then with some age, certainly in Rioja, things like meat, leather, mushroom starts to come through as well. And actually, in the old days, many hundreds of years ago, they thought that Tempranillo was Pinot Noir. And you can see a similarity in terms of its age-worthy characteristics. But really, we know it quite distinctively as a different variety today. If you have a question, a comment, a concern, please pop it below this video in the comments section. Maybe you've been to Spain, and maybe you've enjoyed Spanish wine. We would love to hear from you. You'll find social media at the bottom of every slide as well. Next grape variety is Garnacha Tinta. The home of Garnacha or Grenache is here in Spain from Aragon. This is a very late ripening variety. Therefore, it performs best in warm to hot climatic conditions or on soils that can conduct heat quite well. So in the mountains of Madrid, for example, you'll find granitic soils, which are really good at absorbing heat and enabling Garnacha to ripen well. It also is just a wonderful grape variety adapted to very hot and dry conditions. So it has very high tolerance to drought and heat. So you'll find it typically in areas with very low rainfall. These are areas, for example, like the likes of Caleatud and Carrenena, La Mancha, we find it as well, and other places, even in Rioja as well. It has sweet, thin-skinned grapes, which leads to very high levels of alcohol. So typically Garnacha has somewhere around 14 to 16% alcohol if made as a singular variety. One of the major reasons why we find it blended is that the alcohols are very high. So often other varieties are found into it. In France, of course, we have the likes of Syrah and Mourvèdre. And here we have the likes of Tempranillo, for example, which brings the alcohol down to a slightly more manageable amount. It can oxidize quickly. There are some notable expressions that don't and are age-worthy, but typically these wines mature quite quickly. It's quite widely used for rosados, so our pink wines, and probably this this is very much conjecture, but possibly the most famous style is Priorat, where you find low-yielding old vines from nutrient-poor soils, enabling the production of intense, full-bodied and complex wines, often blended with Garnacha, for example. But some people will argue, of course, there's brilliant Garnacha in Ribera, in Navarra, in Rioja, in Garnacha. There are lots of areas that do it as well, but probably most will say its most valued, intense and complex expression is Priorat, and Priorat is over in Catalonia, over here. Garnacha's characteristics. So it tends to have lowish tannins, pale colour, moderate acidities with full of red fruits, cherries, raspberries, strawberries, light spices like white pepper, as well as potential oak in some areas, of course. It's kind of a spicy red fruited style. These red fruits can get jammy in commercial expressions of Garnacha Tinta. This variety is Monastrell, otherwise known as Mourvèdre in France. Mourvèdre, Monastrell. This is the original variety, though. This is another late ripening, so it needs hot, sunny conditions to ripen in places like Jumilla and Yecla, which is down here in the Mediterranean affected eastern parts of the country. Warm Mediterranean conditions. It likes it down there in that zone. Typically high in alcohol. It has medium to low acidity and is black fruited with typically quite a lot of body and a lot of colour. There are lots of varieties, styles produced from this variety. You'll often find kind of really sort of spicy, peppery, fruity, younger wines, and then more complex, denser wines as well. And here are your characteristics to expect. Typically black fruits, black cherry, blackberry. You'll get violet in younger wines, spice, vanilla, coconut, depending on the American oak as well, and can get quite savory and meaty with a bit of age behind them as well. The next grape variety is Graciano. This is a very highly regarded grape variety, but it is late ripening and it's actually one of the most challenging to cultivate. It has a various amount of problems during the growing season. It's found majorly in Navarra and in Rioja up in the north, and in the latter style, so in the area of Rioja, you'll find it actually in some of the most finest age-worthy wines in small amounts. We often call Graciano one of the seasoning varieties, or even one of the salt and pepper varieties, we call them, because in small amounts they add a wonderful smattering of colour, tannin, acidity and dark fruit into the blend. Too much and it can dominate the blend. Here you go, that's all your dark characteristics coming through. Things like dark fruits, licorice, pepper, spices, typical of a Graciano. Very rare to find it as a single varietal, though they are found in places like Navarra and Rioja, like Contino, for example, typically blended as a variety. Another one is the Garnacha, otherwise known as Mazuelo. So Garnacha in places like Catalonia and Mazuelo in Rioja. So this variety is an important one. It's late ripening and it can really yield a huge amount. So it's better on low vigor sites, meaning soils, the geology that has low nutrients, therefore the vine doesn't grow as much. And that's quite classic in areas, for example, like Priorat, for example. It adds colour, tannin, acidity in black fruit. It's not as spicy as Graciano, but it certainly is dense and fruity. And it is used in Rioja in about the same amounts as Graciano. And then in Priorat, where it's actually one of the major two grape varieties along with Garnacha. So really, you would also then argue that its most famous expression, again, is in Priorat. Hence, we're seeing Priorat being highly regarded and commented on. Hence why it's one of the two DOCAs of Spain. Mencia is next. This is a variety which is rising in fame. It is suited the best to moderate climates. And we find most Mencia in Bierzo, which is about here on this map, and some in Galicia as well, in the northwestern zone, which is more affected by the Atlantic. It's often produced in a lighter style, and there are fuller expressions from old vines as well. But generally, it's quite an approachable light style. There's your characteristics here for Mencia. Fresh fruit, typically red, medium to high acidity, often towards high, often with a bit of spice, a bit of floral, and even herbaceousness coming through with Mencia. And of course, international varieties can be found here as well. The success of international varieties depends on the region. In areas in the northeast, such as Navarra and Penedès, Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot are amongst the most grown varieties. So Navarra is in the north. Penedès is found within Catalonia, so near Barcelona. So both of these areas are close to France, hence why these varieties are quite a lot in these zones. Now, they can also be found in blends in some of the top wines of these areas and into central Spain. And they're often found in do pago wines, single estate, high quality wines. Not always, but typically, international varieties are found. In other areas, the popularity of international varieties has waned, has decreased, and the focus has been more on native varieties. Okay, please join me for the next video on the white grape varieties, going through the likes of things like Albarino, for example, also the likes of Vieira, and also Irene will be discussed in that section, as well as one more, Verdejo, as well in that one. Any questions, any comments, any concerns, please pop them in the comment section below this video. You can get in touch with social media as well. And if you do find yourself in the UK, come and say hello for a class, a glass, or a bottle. I've been Jimmy Smith. Ciao for now. Goodbye.